less than a month out from January 6th. There'll be a lot of looking back on January 6s. Fascinating story. This is one of the most interesting stories about that. I think the reason why I put this, talk about this story, because it is the most explicit, simplistic example of putting to lie the idea that there wasn't some plan afoot in terms of the presidency and storming the Capitol. Right? Because we've been told that it was, but the president, the former president, Trump has said this, there was a rally and people just happened to march without planning down to the Capitol. And there has been, on Monday, the Inspector General of the Interior Department released a 47-page report. They're in charge of the permitting process for the rally that took place that Donald Trump addressed. And the rally was applied for by Women for America First, which, surprisingly, because it's a conservative organization, is actually run by women.
What?
I know that's shocking.
Women can be fashy too.
Well, but my point is that
no, I'm aware.
I have debated head of Concerned Women of America, and his name I can't remember, but it was a he.
Yes.
So they organized the Save America rally in Washington on January 6th. They lied on multiple occasions to the permitting guy of the national park when signing up for their permit, saying they are not going to march to the Capitol. Now, you can say, well, maybe they didn't lie. Maybe they didn't know that they were going to march to the Capitol, and that's been the whole argument, right? Well, according to the investigation, Women for America First repeatedly told Park Service officials there would be no march to the Capitol while privately planning for one. When shown private text messages indicating there would be a march, a park ranger involved in the permitting process told investigators it, quote, blew her mind. The Park Service had repeatedly asked Women for America First whether there would be a march, and the organization, quote, was just adamant there was going to be no march. So it turns out that a White House liaison sent text messages on January 3rd from Women to America First regarding a demonstration at the Ellipse. That's where the first speech went. POTUS expectations are intimate. And then, so we're going to have a small rally and then send everyone over to the Capitol, the message said. And that was from Katrina Pearson. Katrina Pearson, in addition, they had the White House liaison. Katrina Pearson, who was a Trump spokeswoman, sent an email the day before with nearly identical language. Also, on January 3rd, Women for America First, which had received a permit on January 1 for a 5,000-person rally, expanded the number of attendees to 30,000 while continuing to deny Park Service officials there would be a march. On January 4th, Kylie Jane Kremer, who was one of the two women who started Women for America First, quote, POTUS is going to have us march there at the Capitol, she added. This is pretty explicit.
Yes.
But then she goes on to say, it can also not get out about the march because I will be in trouble with the National Park Service and all the agencies, but POTUS is going to just call for it, quote, unexpectedly.
Okay, so this is essentially a document or a transcript where it says, I am going to do the crime. I'm knowing that I'm going to do the crime, or I'm lying. I know I'm lying, and then I am lying at the behest of Donald Trump's office.
I would add, and my understanding is the president has already formed an alibi for this act.
Right.
Which is that it's just going to be called for unexpectedly.
We are lying in tandem with one another.
Yep. And so this, Now, of course, the guy's already been, but I would imagine we're going to hear about this in lawsuits, that we may see from like Capitol Police who were injured. This is going to open up, I think, Trump to maybe some other legal liability and to others, obviously. But it is also really puts to lie, and I think people already knew this was a lie, but this is pretty explicit. I mean, they're already talking about the alibi that's going to cover for the lie, not just that they perpetrated on the park ranger service, but that the president was going to use. They're already aware of what the president's alibi was going to be.
It's amazing. And this is instructive, too, about when you're consuming like right-wing content and you're trying to understand how they operate in the press. They're always doing doublespeak when it comes to like regular standard conservatives, activist groups like this, where they're saying one thing to the people that they need to say this to in order to get over the finish line and privately expressing their intentions, or whether it goes to like white supremacists who know exactly what to say and dog whistles that they say in public while behind the scenes they want to say like kill all the XYZ minority groups. They know that they can't, as a minoritarian movement, win people over, and this is a very broad analysis of this, but they're lying in service of their agenda is like inherent to political activism on the right.
So with that said, we have seen, through these text messages about the setting up of the initial rally on January 6th, right? We know that the organizers lied to the Park Service about the intentions. We know that they knew that the president was going to pretend that this was an unexpected event, that people were going to march down to the Capitol. And then the question becomes like, okay, why were they hiding the fact that there was going to be a march down to the Capitol? Why did the president already have a pre-established alibi as to why they were marching down to the Capitol? Because at the other end of the Capitol, there was a plan that was orchestrated out of the White House and involved certain senators and certain congresspeople, and then back in their home states in fake electors, to essentially overturn the election. And Rudy Giuliani is going to pay $150 million because he lied about, in service of that conspiracy. In service of that, he lied about election workers in Georgia, and we know that Fox News had to pay money because they were lying about the voting machines, and so we see all that. Here is Caitlin Collins. You'll remember last week she was talking to Ron Johnson, the second dumbest senator in the Senate, only because of Tommy Tuberville's win, about the fake electors and his involvement in all of that, because he was supposed to be like working with the vice president. Mm-hmm. And he said, Democrats have done that many times before. And she said, when? And he said, well, check the books. And she's like, what book? And
he said, my office will get back to you.
And here they got back to her, and she's following up on that. And this was late last week.
Johnson may not have read the books that he told us to check very closely. He was here on the show Monday night, and when he was asked a pretty simple question, should someone who tried to overturn the last election be involved in overseeing the next one, the Wisconsin Republican said this. Which
Democrats
one?
have done the same thing.
In
Republicans
Wisconsin,
never tried to criminalize it.
fake slates of electors?
No, it's happened in different states. I
Which one,
didn't come
sir?
prepared to give you the exact states, but it's happened. It's happened repeatedly. It has happened repeatedly. Just go check the books.
Which books?
I mean, there have been alternate slates of electors by Democrat electors in our history. Again, this wasn't what this interview was going to be about. I'll come and I'll provide you the information.
I look forward to your office sending that information. We'll publish it if it's accurate. So he followed up on Twitter, listed the 4 examples that you see here, none of which proved his point. Democrats have not repeatedly used alternate slates of electors. None even come close to what Republicans did in 2020. Really, just one of the examples he cites even is relevant to this. There's some big differences, so I'll tell you what they are. The senator is pointing to the 1960 election, something that we have seen Republicans bring up repeatedly since Trump lost in 2020. That year, Democrats in Hawaii sent an alternative slate of electors to Congress. Vice President Richard Nixon at the time and John F. Kennedy, they were nearly tied in the state. But here, the facts about what happened next are critical. At the time, a recount was still underway, one that ultimately flipped the results from Nixon to Kennedy. A judge would rule that the Kennedy electors were legitimate. And I should note that when Kennedy was ultimately the winner in the final count in Hawaii, it was Nixon himself, as vice president, who presided over the session approving that slate of electors instead of his own on January 6, 1961. In 2020, meanwhile, the recount in Wisconsin was over. It showed that Biden did indeed win Senator Ron Johnson's home state. Wisconsin's alternate GOP electors met more than 2 weeks after that recount and still signed a false certificate of electors. Trump and his supporters, of course, would go on to lose 7 more lawsuits in Wisconsin related to the electors. The other examples on Senator Johnson's list are instances where Democrats voiced objection to the election results. Not exactly instances of plots to overturn an election that was affirmed by recounts and by the courts, but even if you disagree with what those Democrats did, most importantly here, those instances went nowhere because the candidates who lost those elections conceded them. Of course, Senator Ron Johnson's role in this has also come under scrutiny, given the text messages showing that his chief of staff was trying to deliver a, quote, alternate slates of electors for Michigan and Wisconsin directly to Vice President Pence on January 6th, something that will surely be included in the history books.
There you go. I added the Law and Order drop. I just want you to know they did not do that on CNN.
Some staff intern, said we got to, the vice president needs this or whatever. Again, I wasn't involved. I don't know what they said. So I don't know why you're even asking the question.
There you go. There's Ron Johnson trying to
Leave me
address
alone.
that. Leave me alone. Ron Johnson talking about stuff that's so common, he needed to check with somebody who could back it up and then couldn't come up with anything. So there it is.
Satisfying.
That was satisfying.